Hello, everybody. Let's talk about rest today. And when I talk about rest, there is physical rest that you need, when you're tired and you want to take a nap. But I do believe there are different types of rest that we need, especially if you're someone who is used to striving, to going after things, who is ambitious and you're always on the go. You feel like your nervous system never gets a break. So I want to talk about that kind of rest, where we get to rest not only our bodies, but we get to rest the inner part of us as well. So if you're new here, my name is Janet. Welcome to the Second Act Collective. So let's dive into this rest thing. A lot of times, especially for women our age, or women of a certain age, you have been striving for a long time. You have been striving to be good enough. You've been striving with a lot of just different things. And you might feel like, I'm tired, right? Your body feels tired. And I think the effort we put into striving, the effort we put into trying to work to be good enough for people around us, to be good enough for that promotion, to be good enough for whatever, that effort that we put is exhausting, and it can show on our bodies as well. So what I really want to talk to you about is the resting, the different types of resting, and we're going to go through and what to do, right? What are we resting from, and what do we do to help combat that so that we can actually have good rest? So back to the striving. If you've been working all your life, up to the time that you are now in your 40s, 50s, 60s, trying to be good enough, that is exhausting in itself. And so what do we do? How do we stop the striving? How do you stop from working to be good enough to just resting in who you are, resting in the fact that you are enough, you're worthy, and God created it the way you are, and there's no need for you to work hard to receive any worthiness or to be enough for anybody else. So what would the rest then look like in a place where you feel like you've been striving, you've been going after good enough? Is that you stop over explaining yourself. You stop trying to justify your actions. You stop trying to be impressive. Because I think that's something we all fall into, is that we are sometimes subconsciously trying to be impressive, and to no end, honestly, because it just gets exhausting. So we stop doing that so that we rest from that and just let our lives be, let ourselves be, let us stop trying to earn approval and just accept. And sometimes it's simply just a matter of you accepting within yourself that I am enough, and that's good enough. Like, I am enough. I do not need to be like anybody else. I do not need to try to please anyone. I am just enough. And kind of once you accept that, I think there's a rest that comes. There's a rest that comes with just stopping the striving in our lives. So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about, is resting from the striving, resting from constantly looking for affirmation, constantly, looking for love. Because another thing, the reason why we end up a lot of times, having this strive mentality is because we are looking for whatever we might not have received as children, whether that was love, affection, affirmation, being affirmed with your parents, all that stuff. And it comes out when we're grown up as us striving to be the best, striving to be good enough, striving to be this and that. And you just coming to a place where you say within yourself, even though those people might never affirm me, or never love me, or never show me the affection, whatever it is you feel like you've missed. If you just come to a place of loving yourself, accepting that you're loved by God, which is the most important thing, and then settling with that within yourself to the point that there is no more need for approval. You don't need anyone's approval, and you really don't. We don't need people's approval. We don't need all the things that we think we need from people, we really don't. I think deep inside, for me as a Christian, is right. I truly believe those are things that we're seeking from God. So coming to a place where we are okay with the fact that we are enough, there's no more striving. You don't need to strive. You don't need to impress anyone. Can bring rest in itself, just emotional, spiritual, and mental rest. Then there's another rest that is something else that we need to get rest from, is the constant need for output, the constant need for, producing, for being productive. And in a place where we are right now, in the time and place we're in the world, there's a lot of push for productivity. Right? And I am so into productivity, so I can get caught up with this. And I had to also draw back, as in my worth is not in how productive I am, because sometimes you get caught up in that. Your schedule is you're overscheduled. If you have kids, like some of us, I have three, you can overschedule your kids. Your life is overscheduled. You have, professional things, business things, you have church things, you have friends and family things, vacations. Like, you just end up, you're constantly trying to put out this thing, trying to do all the things out there, trying to achieve all these things, constantly running on a productivity, mill that never stops. And, you are exhausted just from that. We are exhausted from the trying to give out so much outputs. And I think in the back of our minds, there's also the other thing of not being enough. Like, we're trying to be good enough. So sometimes we just overschedule ourselves. I also believe that we overschedule ourselves when we are afraid of sitting in silence, of sitting. This is a tricky one, because a lot of times we create busyness. We make our schedules so busy because we're trying to avoid stillness. We're trying to avoid silence. Right? So for you to rest, if you're someone who is constantly on this, output treadmill, the rest really comes when you stop trying to multitask, when you stop overscheduling your life, when when you can say to yourself, it's okay for me to stop now. It's okay for me to stop right here, even if the work is not finished. Right? So you don't grind into the night, you don't grind into this. And I do tend to do that sometimes. When I'm working on something, I can go for hours into, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. working on something. Because I just get that logged in thing, and I get logged in, and I don't want to get off my chair until I'm done with it. But teaching myself and saying to myself, it's okay for me to stop now and rest before this thing is finished. I think that's very important, that we don't always have to finish everything in a day or in a week, whatever the schedule is. Sometimes put us, I understand the deadlines, but sometimes they're just schedules that we put on ourselves, and we are constantly on that, output treadmill. So there is a rest that is required from that pursuit of outputs, always trying to do something, and us just taking the time to rest. Then, as women, a lot of us, we have a lot of mental overload. There's truth to that, and I've experienced this, because we carry so much for so many people, our family members, work staff, distant relatives, you name it, co-workers. We tend to carry emotionally and mentally a lot of things. And when this happens, you get exhausted. Just your thoughts are like forever going. Like and I don't know if you've done this, but when you feel like, okay, even though I'm sitting and I'm like, I'm gonna rest, I'm gonna take a nap, I still have like a lot going on in my head, and I can't stop the thoughts, and the thoughts keep coming. And a lot of times it's because you're worried about something, anxious about something, or whatever it is, or maybe there's a deadline coming up and you're like, oh, I need to do something, I need to do something. So you might be resting, like physically sitting and saying, I'm gonna rest, but mentally you're not. Mentally you are like, there's a mental overload, you are exhausted. And I think just realizing this, that's, you could be seated but not truly resting, is important, and trying to figure out what's going on in our heads. That is causing all this mental, upheaval going on in our heads. What is going on? And what are the things that we can do to get rest from this, to be able to rest when we have so much mental overloads going on in our heads? Is that if we try to simplify our routines, and to a point where we have reduced our daily decisions, because a lot of times the mental overload comes from a lot of the decisions that we have to make. Right? You have to make decisions about yourself, your business, your profession. You have to make decisions about dinner. For some of us, you have to make decisions about your kids and school, or your relationship, or how to do this and that with people in your life, your friendships. Like, there are all these decisions, and we tend to carry that. And I think when we learn to kind of reduce that you don't have to decide everything at one time. You don't have to make decisions for everybody either. You can kind of lay some things aside. And I know this is way easier said than done. I have been through it. I go through it too. So I understand that. And you don't even realize, I think the tricky part about all this, the sneaky part I call it, is that you don't realize that you have that much mental overload. But I found myself in a place like, I love cooking, I love entertaining. But sometimes I'm just like, I'm kind of tired of trying to figure out what to make for dinner. Something that might be interesting or fun or whatever. Then I'm just like, I'm just tired from trying to figure this out. It's like, what are we having for dinner today? What are we having for lunch? And you just get to that place, and I realize, oh yeah, I am carrying a mental overload. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking there are chores to be done in the house, there's groceries to be done, and my kids need and this, they need this and this, and I need to order this, I need to make dinner, like I need to do laundry, like there is all this stuff that I am, like, the back of my mind, there's a meal that is going on, and it's churning out all these things that I need to make decisions about, that I need to do. And you get exhausted, and that also shows up even in your body, that you're exhausted. You're like, why am I exhausted? I haven't really done much, but it's the mental overload. And then something else you also need to be aware of is the emotional labor that we carry. Right? So these are kind of linked: emotional labor and the mental overload. The emotional part kind of it differs in a way that it's I would say it's more of the emotions that you carry, right? Because besides the thinking, there's emotional attachment that even comes with the thoughts. So you could be carrying just a lot of like anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of hurt, a lot of disappointment, a lot of shame, right? And this is a big one. We don't realize that when we carry that stuff, a lot of regrets, there is also an emotional overload that happens. And this affects our nervous system a lot. And sometimes you find yourself that you're kind of like, you're irritable, you're like jittery, you're like, and you wonder, what is going on? What's going on with me? Why am I feeling this? It's because there's an emotional baggage that you're carrying. You have a lot of emotions, unresolved emotions, a lot of them, especially to do with anything that is negative in your life, right? So you're carrying that for yourself. And a lot of times, if you're in a family, you're also probably trying to manage everybody else's emotion. You're managing your spouse's emotion. You're managing your kids' emotion, especially. And the more kids you have, the more you have to manage. And these are all things that are being laid on you without you even being aware that you are carrying those things. And you are just exhausted, emotionally exhausted. And I think I've come to a place now in my life that I know, with how old I am now, having lived this long, thank God for that, that's I can now know, okay, this is a mental overload. I have a lot of things decisions I have to make. I have this, that needs to be done, this needs to be done, and it's waiting on me. And I can differentiate between the emotional overload, where I feel like I'm carrying a lot of emotions within me, especially if they're negative emotions, or that I'm carrying somebody else's emotion, trying to manage their emotions for them so that they don't either overreact, or they don't get upset with me, or they don't disrupt my life, whatever, or that they're happy. And this becomes a burden, right? You're carrying all this for all these people. And not that they ask you to carry, we just tend to carry a lot of times. And sometimes there are people who want you to manage their emotions. Um, and sometimes, with children, you, as a mother, you kind of get into that role of trying to help them manage their emotions, because they don't really know how to manage their own emotions. So we tend to carry all that on us. And then we feel tired, we feel irritable, we feel frustrated, we are exasperated, we just go off sometimes because we're carrying all these things. So what do we do? How do we then get rest from that? I think first and foremost is acknowledging that you feel that way. It is also taking the time to like really examine how you are feeling. Like, what exactly am I feeling, and where are these feelings coming from? Where is this anger coming from? Where is this frustration coming from? And really trying to, and it doesn't have to be a 30-minute session with a therapist. And sometimes you do need therapy if you're going through things. But I'm just talking in terms of just the day to day, the things that we carry day to day, that we need to be able to examine why we're feeling this way, and then stop trying to manage other people's emotions, right? We need to step out of being responsible for how people feel, especially if the people are adults, because we are not responsible for how someone feels, because people feel the way they feel because of whatever thoughts that they're entertaining in their heads. Yes, we can do things to people that will make them feel a certain way. So I'm not, kind of making that light of that. But at the end of the day, you are actually responsible as an adult for how you feel. You're responsible for your actions. You're responsible for how you react. And that is the power that you have as an individual. So we, to save ourselves and stop being saviors, because a lot of times we're trying to be saviors to everybody, and we are not Jesus, right? So we are not there to constantly be managing people. We do our best to not make people feel a certain way by what we say and what we do. We watch what we say and what we do, so we don't, make people feel a certain way. But at the end of the day, adults have to actually manage their own emotions. So that is not our responsibility. And by us stepping out of that responsibility, we are able to rest, at least emotionally, to have that emotional rest where our nervous systems are not always on alert because of so much emotion going on. And I think for a lot of women, when we carry these mental overloads and emotional uh, overloads, and we tend to carry that just on our bodies, we start to gain weight, right? Weight around the belly, weight that you can get rid of, and a lot of it is stress related, because you have too much cortisol going on in your body, in your system. So it's important, just even for our health, that we're able to release that. We're able to stop trying to fix everything for everybody, because we are also not the fixer-uppers of people's lives. Even though we try, we are not the fixer-uppers of people. So mentally telling yourself, like, okay, I can help, but there's also so much as you can do. And I think there's also so much you can do. I also believe that's where the boundaries come in place. Like, I can help this person up to this point, but I'm not going to carry their load for them. I'm not going to carry their emotions for them. And I'm not going to try to fix everything for them, because you're not God. Sometimes you can't fix things for people. So just coming to that acceptance and stepping out of it. And it's work. It is work to come to a place where you realize, okay, that person's emotions and how they feel is not my responsibility anymore. Because if you have apologized and you've done all you can to make the situation good, if you wrong them in the first place, then you cannot continue to be held responsible for how they choose to continue to feel or want to feel or want to act. Right? Something else you can do to get some rest is acknowledging that you don't have the capacity for this right now. Like just saying there's a situation going on and just saying, I really do not have the capacity, the mental capacity or emotion or to just handle this right now. And that's okay. That is not quitting, right? That is just acknowledging that you might not have capacity because you are also maybe at your max, right? And I even see this with my kids. Sometimes if I'm going through something or things are happening in my life and there's something that I'll be like, I'm just not in a place to handle this right now. I need some time. And I think being honest about that helps. It helps the other people know that you care, but you are right now just acknowledging you yourself have things that you're dealing with that you need to handle before you can take on this other load that has come into the picture, into your lives. So when we create these spaces where we are able to talk about things, where we are able to, offload things that are not something that we should carry in the first place, there is a rest that then comes. There is an emotional rest that comes with it. And as a Christian, for me, a lot of this is done, through prayer. And for a lot of people, you can also do journaling, right? That helps people seem to get help with that. Even the self-care that we talk about as women, doing things to take care of yourself, massages, whatever, bubble bath, those things are good, but sometimes the inner things are so heavy that no matter how much you go and do your spa thing, your spa day, it really doesn't take away that issue. It might make you feel better, and which is good. It's good to have the spa day, to have your nails done, to make yourself feel good and get out sometimes out of that space. If you're in a space where you're really feeling the emotional burden is heavy. So, like I said, there's prayer for us Christians. For me, I do just go to God and spend time in prayer, spend time reading the word of the Lord so I can kind of realign myself with what actually matters. Because sometimes the emotional things we are holding on to don't actually matter as much. It just feel very urgent, because emotions tend to feel that way. They tend to feel urgent, yet they're probably not that important at the end of the day. So if you're someone who journals, that's a good way. I am trying to get into that. I keep saying I'm going to do this. Hopefully I'll do that. Start doing it on my birthday, which is coming up next month. So, but journaling helps. And people sometimes take walks. Sometimes people go to the gym, swim or whatever, kind of to get that adrenaline out of you, so that you can kind of settle your hormones, your emotions, and then maybe look at the situation when you've kind of calmed down. So those are things that you can do to rest, to give yourself some rest from like emotional burdens that you might be going through. Then there's the thing about agency and pressure, right? So when we're in a striving mode of life, survival is kind of what that is. When we're in that space, there tends to be everything can look like it's urgent and there's pressure, especially with this financial, right? You can be like, oh, I just left my job. I'm trying to do this thing. I'm trying to start it over. I don't know what's going to happen. So there's like maybe financial pressure, or I stopped the business that I had and I'm trying to start another one in this transition. And I think this is felt a lot. So when we're in transition, and as women over 40, while we are going a lot of transitions in our life, there could be a lot of agency for money, agency. You feel the agency and pressure to change situation, or for something, the next thing to happen, and you're like, oh, when is it going to happen? Why is it taking so long? So there's that pressure that can happen, and so now you're striving, you're in that survival mode, and you're feeling the pressure. And I'm not saying it's not real. I'm just saying, not all things are urgent and not all things have to bring pressure upon us, because that causes of, again, it causes harm even to our body. It causes harm to to our nervous system, right? And then you end up being sick and all this stuff. So we need rest from that pressure. We need rest from feeling this urgency in all things at all times. So what does then rest look like when we're talking about this sense of urgency and pressure that we feel? It looks like you're slowing down. Honestly, sometimes it's sitting down and just taking a deep breaths, like just breathing slowly, deeply, and calming yourself down. Like, okay, this is actually not an emergency. Nobody's dying here. Nobody's bleeding to death. We are okay. It is just a situation. It is just money. It is just this, whatever it is. Right? So taking the time to breathe and then also slowing down your decisions and pausing before you kind of react or act in a certain way. Taking the time. And this again comes with, experience, and you discipline yourself to do these things when situations comes up. So you have to, like, okay, I don't have to make the decision right now. It might feel urgent, but I don't have to make this decision right now. I might feel the need to act, right? So sometimes when you get like a horrible text message or voicemail, whatever, from somebody, or you're in a disagreement with someone and they say something, there's this thing in you that just makes you feel like, and I go through this too, that like I want to react. You just want to react and say what you have to say. So slowing that, pausing before acting, pausing before reacting is what actually gives us rest. As difficult as it seems at that time, when you're in the situation and you have the emotions, it is just trusting that not everything needs immediate attention. Not everything needs to grab your attention, because this is really what the world is trying to do to us, is to keep us occupied and distracted and grabbing our attention, right? And then there are people in our lives, at work, our family members, that when they have something going on or they have a need, they put that across as if it's an emergency. Now I always say to people, who come to me with their situation, that like, your emergency is not mine. It is not my like agency either. Like, it's not an emergency to me. So because people tend to do that, something is happening in their lives and everybody's now on alert. We all have to address this thing because they, emergency has become something that has to be urgent to me. We have to drop everything and fix this. And yes, there are situations that you do have to do that, right? If something happens, but not all situations are an emergency. So just realizing what is actually an emergency and what is not, what is urgent or what is not, what needs to be addressed right now and what does not, what can wait, that can be very restful. Just taking the time to do that will bring you so much rest, so that you're not always reacting to people's problems. You're not always reacting to people's stuff that they say or do up to you. You're not always reacting to situations, but you are actually determining your own life, determining how you want to proceed in the boundaries that you put around your life. So that's one of the things that we have to rest. That I believe we need rest. And something else that happens, especially if you're striving, if you're someone who's striving, and a lot of us get into that, is that we try to control timing and results. And this happens so much in business, right? I know this, having gone through this, that you do all these things and you have your expectation of when it should happen, when the clients should come, how much money, when you should make a certain amount of revenue. And we are trying to control all that. Yet the only thing, because no matter how much you put, you put information out there, no matter how much you advertise, no matter how much you spend in advertising, there is no guarantee that you'll get the customers. There's no guarantee that the work you've put in is going to give you the results that you expect. There is, I know, a certain expectation, right? So the more you do something, the more likely you're going to have some results, but they might not be the results that you expect. They might also not be on the timeline that you have. And this is something of a struggle for all of us because we want control. Everybody, we all want to control our lives as much as we can, and yet really God controls the timing of things in our lives, and we have no control over results. The only thing we have control of our own actions. So how do we then rest from all this, from the striving to control time and forcing outcomes? How do we rest? Right? We rest by just allowing things to unfold and accepting, honestly, the fact that you have no control over results. And coming to terms with the fact that the only person you can change is you. The only thing that you can do something about is the things that you can do. And if you do that, you do want to rest in the thing that, okay, I've done my best. And now you wait to see things unfold, to see what the results will be. And also not putting timing to everything. And if you're someone who is into goal setting, and this happens a lot, where you set goals and of course, you want to put the goal setting process of putting the timeline, which is good. But as much as we do that, we really don't have control on what happens. So I think holding, I like to use this phrase that I want to hold things loosely in my life, so that if they have to go, they can go freely because I'm not holding on to them. So just holding the timeline loosely, it doesn't mean you're not doing your part. It doesn't mean you slack and just be like, well, I can't do anything about the results, so I'm not going to try. No, you do your part, you work, you bring in excellence, you do your best, you work hard, and then you just hold the results kind of loosely, as in, okay, I've done my part and I also know what I expect. But even if that doesn't happen, I have to trust that what I've done is enough and is good enough. And eventually I will see some results. I will see what I want. Right. And rest also looks like you taking small aligned steps, because a lot of times we are forcing outcomes in taking all these leaps, quantum leaps. You hear about that in productivity. And a lot of stuff that we are like striving to get this and that. And sometimes it's just taking small steps. Sometimes it's just taking the right step, even if it's one. And that in itself can do a lot more good and give you better results than you trying to quantum leap stuff and whatever it is they talk about out there. And then you releasing. I think this is a very powerful one in terms of resting. When you release the need, there is a need we have it within us to have everything figured out. A lot of us don't do stuff. We don't pursue things. We don't pursue our dreams because we're trying to figure things out. And I can tell you, I have been the whole YouTube thing. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how I was going to do the recording. What camera do I need to buy? Should I do it on Zoom? Or should I end up just doing it on Zoom anyway? Where should I have this? In my kitchen, in my dining, in my lounge, trying to figure everything out before you even start. Before you even start recording, you're like wasting months and months and months trying to figure that out. And when you come to a place of rest, is when you just release that needs. Get rid of that need to have everything figured out and just start. Right? Just get rid of, does it matter? I'm sitting in my kitchen and I actually do a lot of work here on my kitchen table. Even the business that I had before, I did a lot of work because there's more light, I have more windows in my first floor kitchen area than I have in my office, which is in the basement. It does have a window, but it doesn't have a lot of light like I would like. So does it really matter? The thing is, I'm trying to talk to you as I'm talking and share what I know and give some value and, have a community of women. Does it really matter where I am, where I'm sitting while I'm talking about all this? No, it really doesn't matter. So the need we tend to have to figure things out stops us from a lot of things. It also puts us in a place of striving and survival and all kinds of stuff that we don't need to. So we need to rest from that. We need to release that need so we can be in a place of rest, that we're working from a place of rest. So one thing I do want to clarify about resting. So there is the physical resting we're talking about. You doing all the things that make you feel better, your body, and sleeping and eating healthy, like all those things that are good. But when we talk about rest, we're not talking about you being lazy. We're not talking about you not going after things. We're not talking about quitting, right? Especially at this stage of our lives. When we speak of rest, we're talking that the inner place within us that we're working from is a place of rest. And if you're a Christian, the Bible talks about the rest that we have in Christ. It does not mean there's not chaos going on around you. It does not mean there's no life to do and things to do, but there's an inner place within us of rest, of like, I'm not doing this from striving. I'm not doing this from trying to get attention or affirmation or love. You have rested in who you are, and you know who you are. So there's no need to impress anyone, to do anything for anyone, apart from you're working from a place of just of clarity, really. Because I think when you're in that place of rest within internally, you're working from clarity. There's no confusion. You're very clear about who you are, you're clear about what you want, you're clear about where you're going. So that's the kind of rest we're talking about. So it's not quitting. It's not like, oh, I'm not going to do anything anymore. No, it's a place of knowing, of rest, where you're doing things from a very different place, from a place of intention. All right. So the other rest that we need, if you're someone who hustles a lot, and there are periods in life that we hustle, I understand that, and they've done that, and so there are seasons where we do hustle, but we want to rest from hustle that is disguised as self-care, right? So sometimes, and I'm speaking to myself, but sometimes, this intention or desire to be healthy. I'll give you an example of, health, where, it is self-care, right? To work out, to have routines, to eat healthy, to whatever the things that we do to maintain our bodies and for us to look good and to feel good. But what happens sometimes, even that kind of self-care, can become a place of striving, right? Where you're trying to optimize your life. Everything's about optimization. You're optimizing your routines. You have checklist of, did I work out, how many workouts? Like, you can become very obsessive about even the self-care itself. That is like, is it a rest anymore? Oh, yeah, on some productivity treadmill here going on. But it can turn into that, where we have turned the self-care, it has become now a side hustle in itself. They're so-called, taking care of ourselves. So we want to rest from that. We don't want different forms of striving disguised as something else. We're not looking for that. We're not going for that. Not at this stage in our lives. We are not. So we want to rest from that. And so what does this look like? Like, you don't have to optimize every single thing. Not everything in your life has to be working at optimal, whatever capacity and routines and everything. We don't. We can let go of trying to optimize everything in our lives. And we also don't want to make the wellness, the pursuit of wellness become a checklist and a to-do list and I have to do this. We want to choose things that are nourishing, not just impressive. right? So we are doing things for self-care, working out so that we feel good more than that we look good. Yes, we want to look good, but the most important thing is that do we actually feel good within ourselves? So it's really about I guess, the motives on this one, so that we don't clothe certain things that are really hustle as self-care or something else. And we kind of have to be careful about that. Then we want to talk about the digital noise. And this is a big one because it activates. It always does activate our nervous system. There is a lot of like digital noise. Our phones, our iPads, our screens, whichever form you're taking in your stuff. The scrolling, the YouTube channels and the shorts and the Instagram and you name it, whatever your choice of screen time is. And that in itself is noise, right? And it occupies us, right? We do it because it occupies us, it entertains us, it's a distraction from a lot of things. And we use that. We tend to use our our devices as distraction from life, because sometimes life is just not fine and you want to run away from it. And we tend to use the devices we have for that. And that becomes noise. Before we know it, we're addicted to our phones, we're addicted to the iPad, we're addicted to whatever it is, your choice on the menu there. So we want to rest from that noise. And, I try and fall off the horse and try. But what we want to do is to limit even how much time we spend. And I think even for women, especially if you're working from home or if you're a stay-at-home mom, sometimes, because there's a lot of silence when everybody's gone from the house, you can tend to want to just be on your device when you're not working or whatever, when you take breaks. So being aware of that, like, what are your habits where because I have to check myself as well, like, am I spending too much time on my iPad? Am I spending too much time on my phone? What are my habits? What exactly am I doing with my screen time? As much as for my kids, I limit it and I'm very strict about it. But I think as adults, we can be very addicted to it and not be aware that we are. So we want to rest from that. We want to make sure that we are limiting ourselves on how much screen time we get. We want to make more time for silence, like just being silent. We want to make time for reading, for journaling, for stillness, taking the walk or just being quiet, not having any noise out there. Because noise is distracting. Noise is a distraction in our lives. And we tend not to think deeply. We tend not to want to be with our own thoughts because we keep ourselves busy with all these things. So we want to rest from that and give ourselves and our brains some rest. It's just being quiet, because quietness is in itself a form of restoration to our souls, to our minds, to our bodies. So that's kind of how we can rest. And then, just even resting our bodies gently, because we don't always have to do like hard workouts and whatever. I understand if you're trying to lose weight, or there's a goal you have where your body's concerned, that's okay. But you also need time where your body just, where you're not pushing yourself, especially over 40, where you're not always pushing yourself, but you're treating your body with gentleness. And, sometimes it's the gentle stretchings instead of something intense. Sometimes it's going to bed early. Sometimes it's, just listening to your body when it says no, that you're tired, and actually resting when you're tired. Sometimes if I'm just tired, if I take like a 15, 20-minute nap, I come out of that very rejuvenated and feeling better. So listening to our bodies and just resting our bodies in a very gentle way is a good form of rest. Not always pushing our bodies hard and, to achieve this, to look that way, but to just be gentle with ourselves. And the last thing I want to cover is, and I kind of touched on this before, is the guilt and shame that we feel and how much that is a burden and something that we all need to rest from. So guilt and shame a lot of times comes because of past mistakes, right? Things that we did wrong, or maybe things that were done to us that have brought shame and regret. So guilt, shame, regrets, all those things are kind of pegged in that. And that is also another cause of mental overload and emotional overload, is when we're carrying all these guilts, that maybe we are not enough. We feel guilty that we are not there enough for our kids. We are not there enough for our aging parents. We feel guilty that we are not spending enough time with our family. Like, because we are, there's so much of us being pulled in different direction that we feel like we are not good enough for in any area for anyone, because we are being pulled in a lot of directions, especially at this age where you have kids that are probably either in college, high school, or some young, depending on when you had them, or you have aging parents that you're trying to take care of, you have friends, relationships, you have a spouse, you have all this stuff that is going on and you're being pulled. And so that can bring in self-guilt uh, and shame of not being enough. Maybe the things that, maybe you did have a career, got fired, and now you're transitioning into trying to start something else. There can be shame with that. And there's a lot of things that bring shame. There can be shame because people said and did something to you. Shame because you didn't, you were not able to maybe pursue the dreams that you want or accomplish the dreams that you want or the goals that you had. So you can have internal shame. You can have all these regrets about past mistakes, past relationships, all this emotional baggage that we're carrying. So we need that rest, need rest from the guilt, from the not enough. And this is where you really allow yourself to rest without, again, trying to be everything to everybody, you just stop trying to be productive uh, to everyone, trying to achieve everything you can for everyone. And you just let today be enough. You let the day be enough, that you are enough, and today is enough. And what you can do, because a lot of times this is about what you can do for other people, that what you're doing is enough. So you are choosing over time the things that are sustainable to you, and not, just going forward and accelerating and trying to do all these things. But what does rest can look like? What is sustainable? In my relationships with the things that I have going on, what is actually sustainable? And is what I'm already doing enough? Am I allowing to get myself pulled in all these different directions? And then you're feeling exhausted. So looking at all these things, we are in a place at this age where we are, if you're over 40 and beyond, where we are really trying to do life differently because we are supposed to be wiser. And so we're trying to build with intention, right? So resting then becomes important, and knowing the kind of things that does not bring us rest is important, and what we can do to then get the rest, not just physical rest, but rest for every area of our life, our emotions, our bodies, our spirit. Like, we just need that rest. So again, when in this season, when we talk about rest, we're not talking about quitting. We're not sitting on a couch and getting old. No, we're just talking about living a life that is more intentional, with awareness, with intention, and building the life that we want to build, that we actually get to enjoy living. Sometimes, because the lives we had before, we might have just survived them. And now in this stage, we are looking to build something that is sustainable, something with intention, something that we will love and not try to escape. right? And rest is a very, very important part of this. So if you're new here or if you have not subscribed, I would love for you to subscribe. And I would love for you to join our community. There's a link in the description. But this is all I had for today. I will talk to you soon. Have a great day.